The alarm system screamed across the peripheral arm monitoring station. Junior technician Valrin's fore widened as the gravitational sensors showed readings that shouldn't be possible. Something massive was moving through the void between stars, creating ripples in space itself like a stone thrown into still water. "Senior Monitor," Belin called out, his voice cracking with nervousness. "You need to see this, Senior Monitor." Thexula floated over to the console, her crystalline body refracting the dim blue light of the station. She was a Lumini, a species whose people were made of living crystal and pure energy. When she saw the readings, her internal light flickered with concern. "That cannot be right. Run a full diagnostic on all sensors," she ordered. Balrin's 6 fingers danced across the controls. 20 minutes later, he looked up at her with fear in his eyes. "All systems are functioning perfectly, Senior Monitor. The readings are accurate." Thexula felt something she had not experienced in her 300 years of life. Genuine terror. The object moving toward Concord at space was roughly 15 kilometers long. No known species in the galaxy built anything that large. The biggest Concord vessels were barely 2 kilometers at their longest. "Send emergency notification to the Central Council," she said quietly. "Use priority Alpha protocols and may the ancient light help us all." Within hours, the message reached the Concord Council chambers on the diplomatic hub world of Sanctuary. The vast circular chamber held representatives from over 200 species. The insectoid crash chittered nervously, their antennae twitching. The aquatic Dell floated in their water-filled observation spheres, releasing bubbles of distress. Even the normally calm Serans, the reptilian species known for their wisdom and patience, showed signs of agitation. High Counselor Mezan, an elderly Saurian whose scales had turned silver with age, stood at the center of the chamber. His voice was steady, but those who knew him could detect the underlying worry. "Members of the Concordate, we face an unprecedented situation. An object of immense size approaches our territory. We do not know if it is a vessel, a weapon, or something else entirely." A crash representative, Commander Zixthar, leaped to his feet. His mandibles clacked loudly as he spoke. "The ancient texts of my people speak of world eaters. Vessels so large they could consume entire planets. This must be one of them." "Calm yourself, Commander," Miron replied. "We do not know what this is yet. Fear without knowledge serves no purpose." But fear was already spreading. Across dozens of star systems, civilians watched emergency broadcasts. Parents held their children closer. Military commanders activated defense fleets that had not seen action in centuries. The Concorde had enjoyed 800 years of relative peace, built on cooperation and mutual understanding. Now something from beyond their known space threatened everything. Ambassador Captain Zur received his orders 3 days after the initial detection. He was a mid-ranked Saurian officer, experienced but not famous, careful but not cowardly. The High Council chose him precisely because of his balanced nature. "You will take a scout fleet of 12 vessels." High Councillor Mir Sun told him privately. "Your mission is first contact and assessment. Under no circumstances are you to fire first. We need information, not war." Cirque bowed his head. "I understand, High Councillor, but if this thing is hostile and we must defend ourselves, then you defend yourself and retreat immediately. The safety of your crews is paramount." Miron placed a clawed hand on Zurich's shoulder. "I chose you because you think before you act. The galaxy may depend on that quality in the coming days." As Zerika's fleet prepared for departure, scientists across Concord space studied every piece of data they could gather. The mysterious vessel was still several weeks away from Concord territory, but its energy signature was unlike anything in their databases. Dr. Shinvara, a Lumina astrophysicist, made the first significant discovery. She was studying the vessel's power emissions when she noticed something unusual. The energy output was enormous, yes, but it was not configured like any weapon system she had ever seen. Instead, it seemed to be distributed throughout the entire structure in a pattern that suggested life support systems. "It's using enough power to sustain a city," she murmured to herself. "No, not a city. Multiple cities. This doesn't make sense." She ran the calculations 3 more times. Each time the results were the same. Whatever this vessel was, it was designed to keep massive numbers of beings alive for extended periods. Meanwhile, on the fringes of Concord space, independent traders and explorers reported sightings. The descriptions were all similar: a dark shape against the stars, vast and imposing, moving with purpose toward the heart of civilized space. Some said they could see lights along its hull like windows. Others claimed to detect multiple energy sources distributed throughout its structure. The Kresh military commander, Zixthar, demanded immediate military action. We should strike now while it is still far from our core worlds. Destroy it before it can threaten us. And if it is peaceful, challenged Luminara, a Lumini counselor, would you have us become the aggressors? We have maintained peace for 8 centuries by choosing dialogue first. Peace maintained by never facing a real threat. Zixthar shot back. Your crystalline species has no concept of survival through strength. My people remember the old wars. We remember what happens when we show weakness to predators. The debate raged across the council chambers for days. Some species advocated for immediate military buildup. Others wanted to send diplomatic envoys ahead of any military presence. A few even suggested evacuating the outer systems entirely until the threat could be properly assessed. Zerk's fleet departed on the 10th day after initial detection. As his flagship, the Concordant Voice, entered faster than light travel, he gathered his senior staff. I want all crews trained on first contact protocols. He told them, yes, we are prepared for combat if necessary, but our primary mission is communication. We represent every species in the Concord. How we handle this will be remembered for generations. His second officer, a young Delelphi named Sorelith, bubbled nervously in her water-filled suit. Sir, what if they don't want to communicate? What if this vessel is an invasion force? Zer considered the question carefully. Then we learn what we can and retreat to warn our people. But I refuse to believe that any species capable of building something so magnificent came all this way simply to destroy. There must be a reason, a purpose we don't yet understand. As his fleet traveled toward the intercept coordinates, long-range sensor arrays finally achieved a breakthrough. The Lumini scientists had developed a new scanning technique that could penetrate the vessel's outer hull. What they discovered sent shock waves through the Concord. Dr. Shinvara transmitted her findings directly to the High Council and to Zerk's fleet. Her message was brief, but world-changing. The vessel contains habitation zones. Preliminary estimates suggest capacity for billions of life forms. Repeat, billions. This is not merely a warship. This is an entire civilization traveling through space. When Zurich received the message, he had to sit down. His mind raced with implications. A civilization in motion. That meant refugees or colonists or explorers on a scale the Concord had never imagined. It meant whatever species built this thing had reasons for leaving their home. It meant they were looking for something, possibly looking for a new home. In the Concord council chambers, the debate took on a new urgency. If this vessel contained billions of beings, the question was no longer just about military threat. It was about resources, territory, and the fundamental question of whether the Concord could share the galaxy with newcomers who thought and built on such a massive scale. High Councillor Miron convened an emergency session. We must decide now, he told the assembled representatives. Do we welcome these strangers, or do we turn them away? And if we choose to turn them away, are we prepared for the consequences? The galaxy held its breath and waited for answers that would not come easily. The massive vessel dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the sanctuary system with a flash of energy that registered on every sensor within 3 light hours. Zarek watched from the bridge of the Concordant Voice as the behemoth materialized against the backdrop of distant stars. Ancient light preserve us, whispered Saralith, her aquatic body going completely still in shock. The vessel was even larger than the estimate suggested. 15 kilometers of dark metal and composite materials. Its hull covered with what appeared to be weapons emplacements, sensor arrays, and massive engine assemblies. Lights glowed from thousands of points along its surface, giving it the appearance of a city floating in the void. Zarek forced himself to breathe slowly. His tactical training wanted him to see this as a threat. His diplomatic instincts told him to look deeper. Communications. Are we ready to transmit? Yes, sir. All first contact protocols are loaded and ready. Then let's introduce ourselves. Zerk nodded to his communications officer. Send the mathematical sequence followed by chemical notation and then basic linguistic patterns. Let's hope someone out there speaks the universal language of numbers. The transmission went out on the observation screens. The massive vessel simply hung in space, silent and imposing. Seconds turned to minutes. The bridge crew shifted nervously. From the Concorde diplomatic hub on the planet below, billions of beings watched through quantum-linked broadcasts. Then the vessel responded. A burst of data came through perfectly matching the Concorde's mathematical and chemical sequences. Whoever was aboard that ship understood the basics of universal communication. They were intelligent. They wanted to talk. We have incoming visual transmission, the communications officer announced. The main screen flickered and changed. A face appeared and Zarek heard gasps across the bridge. The being looking back at them was bilaterally symmetrical with two forward-facing eyes positioned for depth perception. Predator eyes. Zurich noted the creature had smooth skin without scales or chitin colored. A warm brown hair grew from the top of its head tied back in a practical manner. The face showed expressions that seemed almost readable. Concern, caution, hope. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Nations Space Corps vessel Indomitable, the being said. The words were incomprehensible, but within seconds, the Concorde's translation algorithms began parsing the language structure. We come in peace. We seek only safe passage and, if possible, friendship. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. Zarek felt some of his tension ease. At least they were willing to talk. I am Ambassador Captain Zurich of the Galactic Concordat, he replied carefully, knowing his own words would need translation. Your vessel is impressive and unexpected. We wish to understand your intentions. Captain Chen's face showed what might have been relief. We are refugees, she said. Our star was dying. We built 12 ships to save as many of our people as possible. The Indomitable carries 50 million souls seeking a new home among the stars. The bridge went completely silent. 50 million beings on a single vessel. The number was staggering. The largest Concorde colony ships carried perhaps 50,000. This was something beyond their experience. From the planet below, frantic messages flooded Zurich's communication system. The Council wanted answers. Military commanders wanted threat assessments. Scientists wanted data. Zurich ignored them all for the moment, focused entirely on the face on his screen. 50 million, he repeated slowly. Your species must be remarkable builders. But I must ask, Captain Chen, why does your refugee vessel carry so many weapons? Chen's expression shifted to something that might have been sadness because we didn't know what we would find out here in the dark. We hoped for friends but prepared for threats. Every species on this ship is someone we couldn't bear to lose. We built the Indomitable to protect them whatever we might encounter. Before Zurich could respond, proximity alarms blared across the bridge. A young Crush pilot named Tixel stationed on one of the escort fighters had panicked when the Indomitable's scanning beam swept across his small craft. His hands shaking with adrenaline and fear moved toward the weapons controls. All ships stand down. Zurich shouted into the fleet channel. That is a direct order. Do not fire. But Tixel's fear was stronger than his training. His finger hovered over the firing button. In that frozen moment, Zerk saw the future balancing on the edge of a blade. One nervous trigger pull could start a war. One shot could doom both species to conflict. Captain Chen's face disappeared from the screen, replaced by tactical readouts. Zarek watched in horror as the Indomitable's weapon systems powered up in response to the perceived threat. Point defense turrets rotated toward Tixel's fighter. Energy readings spiked across the massive hull. Tixel, stand down immediately. That is a direct order from your ambassador. Captain Soralitha's voice was sharp, cutting through the panic. Tixel's mandibles clacked in distress, but he pulled his hand back from the controls. The moment stretched out, balanced on uncertainty. Then slowly, the Indomitable's weapons powered down. The turrets returned to neutral positions. Captain Chen's face reappeared on the screen, and Zarek could see she had been speaking urgently to someone off camera. "Ambassador, Captain Zurich," she said carefully. "We detected a weapons lock from one of your escorts. Was that intentional?" Sir made a decision that would be studied in diplomatic mirrors for generations. "No, Captain Chen, that was fear. One of my pilots is young and frightened by your vessel's size and power. He acted on instinct, not orders. I apologize for the incident." Chen's face showed surprise, then what looked like respect. "I understand fear. Thank you for your honesty. In the interest of reducing tension, I would like to invite you and a small delegation aboard the Indomitable. Let us show you who we are. Let us prove we mean no harm." The suggestion sent ripples through the Concorde command structure. Military advisors shouted warnings. The crash delegation demanded Zerk refuse immediately, but Zarek looked at Chen's face on the screen and saw something he recognized. The desperate hope of someone who had lost everything and was asking for a chance. "I accept your invitation, Captain Chen," he said. "I will bring 5 representatives from different Concorde species. When would be convenient?" "Whenever you're ready, Ambassador Captain. We'll transmit docking coordinates to your flagship. The Indomitable welcomes you." As the transmission ended, Zerk's second officer turned to him with wide eyes. "Sir, the Council is demanding you refuse. They say it's too dangerous." Zarek stood, straightening his uniform. "Then the Council can find a new Ambassador Captain. Someone must be first. Someone must take the risk to build bridges instead of walls. Today that someone is me." He selected his delegation carefully. Soralith the Delpha for her scientific expertise. Dr. Shinvara the Lumine for her understanding of energy systems. Commander Zixa's second officer, a Crush named who was less aggressive than his superior, and 2 others representing different Concorde perspectives. As they prepared to board the shuttle that would take them to the Indomitable, Zer addressed them quietly. "We are about to see something no Concorde species has ever witnessed. A civilization that builds on a scale we cannot imagine. Whatever we find aboard that vessel, remember, they are refugees who have lost their home. They deserve our compassion, even if they also deserve our caution." The shuttle launched, crossing the void between the small Concorde flagship and the massive human vessel. As they approached, the true scale of the Indomitable became overwhelming. Their entire shuttle could have fit inside some of the surface structures hundreds of times over. A docking bay opened in the vessel's side, large enough to accommodate a Concorde cruiser. The shuttle seemed like a toy as it descended into the illuminated interior. When the airlock opened and Zerk stepped into the Indomitable for the first time, Captain Sarah Chen was waiting with an honor guard of humans in crisp uniforms. She extended her hand in what the translation systems identified as a gesture of greeting and respect. Zurich reached out and grasped her hand carefully, aware that this simple touch was the first physical contact between humans and the Galactic Concorde. The moment would be recorded in history archives forever. "Welcome aboard," Captain Chen said with a smile. "Let us show you who we are." As they walked deeper into the ship, Zurich felt his understanding of the universe beginning to shift. The quarters were vast but not empty. They passed by windows showing gardens, residential areas, and public spaces. He saw human children playing, adults conversing, elders sitting in what looked like peaceful contemplation. This was not a warship. This was a home that traveled through the stars, and Zurich began to understand just how much these humans had sacrificed to survive. Captain Chen led the delegation through corridors that seemed designed for moving armies, but instead carried families. Zer watched human children run past, laughing and chasing each other, completely unafraid of the strange aliens walking with their captain. Parents nodded politely at the delegation, some looking curious, others simply going about their daily lives. "This section is Residential District 7, Chen explained as they walked. "We have 23 residential districts total, each designed to house approximately 2 million people. We tried to recreate the feeling of neighborhoods, places where people could build communities, even while traveling through the void." Dr. Shinvara's crystalline form pulsed with curiosity. "Captain Chen, the energy required to maintain life support for so many beings must be enormous. How do you power such a vessel?" Chen smiled, a gesture the translation systems interpreted as pleasure at the question. I'll show you our reactor cores later, but the short answer is fusion reactors plural. We have 17 primary reactors and over 100 secondary systems. When we designed the Indomitable, every calculation started with one question. How do we keep people alive for potentially centuries in deep space? They passed through a marketplace where vendors sold goods from small stalls. The air smelled of cooking food, spices that were alien to the Concorde species but somehow inviting. Humans bartered and chatted, creating an atmosphere that felt lived in and real. The crush officer clicked his mandibles nervously. Captain, forgive my directness, but we detected what appeared to be weapon systems covering your hall. If this is a peaceful vessel, why so much firepower? Chen's expression became more serious. Let me show you something that will answer that better than words can. She led them to a vast viewport overlooking one of the ship's exterior sections. What the Concorde had identified as weapons were visible, but now Zer could see them in context. The turrets were relatively small compared to the ship's massive size, positioned to provide defensive coverage rather than offensive capability. Those are point defense systems, Chen explained. In deep space, even a small asteroid moving at high speed can punch through hull plating. We need to intercept debris before it can harm the ship. The larger imp placements are for mining operations. We use high-powered lasers to break down asteroids for raw materials. Everything we build, we must source from space itself. Sarilith bubbled thoughtfully in her suit. So, the weapons are actually tools repurposed for protection. Exactly. Chen nodded. Though I won't lie to you. If we're threatened, those tools can be used defensively. We learn to think in terms of defense, not offense. When you're protecting 50 million lives, you don't take chances. The delegation continued deeper into the ship. They saw engineering sections where humans worked on maintaining the massive systems that kept the Indomitable functioning. They visited medical bays that could handle thousands of patients. They observed schools where human children learned about Earth, the home world they had never seen and would never visit. But it was the agricultural decks that truly stunned the delegation. Chen led them into a chamber so vast that weather patterns formed inside it. Artificial sunlight streamed from panels in the ceiling. Fields of grain stretched into the distance, tended by automated systems and human workers. Trees grew in organized groves, their branches heavy with fruit. This is Agricultural Deck 3, Chen said quietly. We have 12 of these throughout the ship. They produce enough food to feed everyone aboard with surplus for storage. We designed them to be efficient, but also beautiful. People need more than just nutrition. They need to see green things growing. They need to remember what it felt like to stand on a planet. Dr. Shinvara moved forward, her energy field reaching out to scan the plants. These are remarkably Earth-like conditions. You've recreated entire ecosystems inside your vessel. We had to, Chen replied. Not just for food, but for psychological survival. Humans need nature, even artificial nature. Without these spaces, without the illusion of planet-side life, people would lose hope during the long journey. As they walked through the artificial forests, Zarek noticed something. In the distance between the trees, he saw structures. Looking closer, he realized they were homes. Families actually lived here in houses surrounded by growing things. Children playing in gardens just like they might have on ancient Earth. Some people couldn't bear living in the metal corridors, Chen explained, noticing his attention. So, we let them build homes in the agricultural decks. As long as they maintain the systems and help with the farming, they can live surrounded by growing things. We learned early on that different people need different environments to feel human. Commander Velmar had been silent for some time, his insectoid features unreadable. Now he spoke, his voice subdued. Captain Chen, my people have legends of world eaters, massive vessels that consumed planets. When we first detected your ship, I believe those legends were real. I advocated for destroying you before you could reach our worlds. Chen turned to face him directly. And now I see that you are not world eaters, but world carriers. You brought your world with you because you had no choice. I was wrong and I apologize. Chen reached out slowly, allowing Velmar to see the gesture coming and placed her hand gently on his chitinous shoulder. You weren't wrong to be cautious. You were wrong only in assuming the worst without evidence. Thank you for being willing to change your mind. The next stop was the Memorial Hall, and it was here that the true weight of humanity's story became clear. The chamber was dimly lit with holographic projections floating in the darkness. Each projection showed a face, a name, a brief biograph. Thousands of them filled the space, perhaps millions, each one representing a human who had died when Earth's sun began to fail. 4 billion people, Chen said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. 4 billion humans that we couldn't save. We had 30 years warning when our scientists detected the sun's instability. In that time, we built 12 Titan-class vessels. It wasn't enough. It could never be enough. The delegation walked through the projections in silence. Zarek read the brief descriptions under each face. Teachers, artists, farmers, children, elders, scientists, laborious, every one of them a life that ended because humanity simply ran out of time and resources. We remember them, Chen continued. Every person aboard every Titan-class ship spends time in their memorial hall. We remember because forgetting would dishonor their sacrifice. They died so that we could live. The least we can do is carry their memory with us to whatever new home we find. Dr. Shinvara's internal light had dimmed with sadness. Captain, I cannot imagine the grief your people carry. To lose so many, to have to choose who would live and who would die. How did you survive such trauma? Chen smiled, but it was a sad smile. By focusing on the living, by making sure that those 4 billion deaths meant something. If we give up, if we fail to find a new home and thrive, then they died for nothing. So, we keep going. We keep hoping. We keep building. They moved on to the hibernation decks. And here, the scale of humanity's journey became even clearer. Massive chambers stretched in all directions, each one containing thousands of suspension pods. Inside each pod, a human slept in artificial hibernation, their life functions reduced to barely measurable levels. 30 million people, Chen explained, her voice echoing in the vast space. We don't have resources to keep everyone awake during the journey. So, we rotate. Each person spends 10 years awake, then 30 years asleep, then 10 more awake. It lets us stretch our resources and gives everyone a chance to be part of the journey. Saralith pressed her face close to one of the pods, looking at the sleeping human inside. They trust you completely to sleep while you guide them through unknown space. To give up decades of their lives in the hope that you'll find them a home. It's not just trust in me, Chen said. It's trust in each other. Every person on this ship knows that we survive together or not at all. That's the one good thing that came from Earth's death. We learned that we're all in this together. The final stop was the bridge where Zarek saw the command center from which humans guided their floating city. The space was functional but not militaristic. Humans worked at various stations monitoring systems, calculating courses, maintaining communications with other parts of the ship. An elderly human man approached, his hair white with age, and his face lined with years of responsibility. This is Dr. James Park, Chen introduced him. He's our chief scientist and the lead architect of the Titan-class vessels. Dr. Park bowed slightly in greeting. Ambassador Captain, I understand you have concerns about our intentions. Let me be direct. We need approximately 3 things from you. Permission to pass through your space safely, information about suitable worlds for colonization, and ideally friendship and trade relations. We have no interest in conquest. We've seen what death and loss look like. We choose life even when it's difficult. Zurich felt the weight of decision pressing on him. These humans were refugees on a scale the Concorde had never dealt with, but they were also potential allies. A species that built with vision and survived through cooperation. Most importantly, they were people who had lost everything and were simply trying to survive. Captain Chen, Dr. Park, Zurich said carefully. The pirate fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel with the confidence of predators who had found easy prey. Their leader, a scarred veteran named Cross, who commanded from a heavily modified cruiser, had built his reputation on knowing when to strike. A Concorde diplomatic mission meant valuable hostages. An unknown massive vessel meant potentially priceless technology. Together, They represented the score of a lifetime. All ships attack formation. Cross growled into the fleet channel. Target the smaller escorts first. I want that big ship crippled, not destroyed. Whatever secrets it holds, I want them intact. The first missiles launched before anyone could respond. Zarek watched in horror from the Indomitable's bridge as 3 of his escort ships took direct hits. The concordant voice shuddered as its shields absorbed impacts. Soralith cried out in alarm, her aquatic body churning with distress. They're beginning boarding actions on the Harmony's light. One of Chen's tactical officers reported, his voice tense. Captain, those Concorde ships are not designed for heavy combat. They'll be overwhelmed in minutes. Zurich turned to Chen, his mind racing through limited options. Captain, you should retreat. Get your people to safety. This isn't your fight. Chen's eyes hardened in a way that reminded Zurich commanded a vessel that carried 50 million souls through the void. Ambassador, Captain, with respect, you're wrong. You came here in good faith. You brought your people to meet mine. That makes this very much our fight. She turned to her crew. Tactical power up all defensive systems. Weapons target enemy vessels only. I want precision strikes on engines and weapon systems. No kill shots unless absolutely necessary. Communications broadcast to the pirate fleet that they have one chance to withdraw peacefully. The warning went out. Cross laughed when he heard it. The big ship thinks it can threaten us. Show them what happens to ships that don't know their place. 20 more missiles streaked toward the Indomitable. Shun watched them come, her expression calm, point defense engage. What happened next would be analyzed by military strategists for decades. The Indomitable's hull was covered with what appeared to be small turrets, hundreds of them. Each one designed to intercept asteroids and space debris traveling at tremendous speeds against missiles. They were devastatingly effective. Tracking systems locked onto each incoming projectile. Laser point defense fired in precise calculated bursts. Every single missile was destroyed before reaching the Indomitable's hull. The pirate fleet's opening volley simply vanished in a series of small explosions that looked almost beautiful against the backdrop of space. On his command ship, Cross stared at his screens in disbelief. What kind of defense system is that? Fire everything. Overwhelm their point defense. The pirate fleet unleashed its full arsenal. Hundreds of missiles, plasma torpedoes, and kinetic projectiles filled space, all targeted at the massive human vessel. The Indomitable's point defense grid responded with machine efficiency. Turrets tracked and fired, creating an invisible web of defensive lasers that nothing could penetrate. Impressive, Commander Velmar murmured, watching the display. They're not even straining their systems. Captain Chen's voice remained steady. Tactical. Are the Concorde ships still under attack? Yes, Captain. The pirates are boarding the Harmony's Light and 2 other vessels. Concorde crew are fighting, but they're not equipped for this. Chen nodded. Then we end this. Weapons. Target the enemy vessels engaged in boarding actions. Disable them, but remember, precision over power. I want them alive if possible. Yes, Captain. Firing railguns. The weapons that Zurich had seen and assumed were for mining operations revealed their true dual nature. Railguns designed to accelerate chunks of ore for processing could just as easily accelerate tungsten rounds to velocities that approached relativistic speeds. The targeting was surgical. Railgun rounds struck the pirate vessels at specific points. Engine sections, weapon imp placements, power generation systems. The impacts were devastating but controlled. Within 30 seconds, 5 pirate ships were crippled, floating dead in space, but with their crews still alive. Cross watched 3 of his ships go dark and felt ice form in whatever served as his heart. All ships' evasive maneuvers, focus fire on that monster, but the Indomitable had been designed by humans who understood something fundamental about survival. The best defense was not to destroy your enemy, but to make attacking you impossibly costly. The remaining pirate ships tried to close distance firing as they came. Every shot was intercepted or absorbed by hull plating designed to withstand micrometeorite impacts at interstellar speeds. Captain, the tactical officer reported, The pirate flagship is attempting to target our civilian sections with heavy plasma weapons. Chen's jaw tightened. This was the line that couldn't be crossed. Threaten the ship's defenses, and she would disable you. Threaten the 50 million people under her protection, and she would end you. Railguns target the flagship's main weapons array. Maximum power. I want those plasma cannons gone. The Indomitable's primary rail gun fired. The round crossed the distance between ships in less than a second. The impact tore through the pirate flagship's forward section, removing its main weapons in a single precise strike. The ship tumbled, its systems failing, but its crew compartments remained intact. The remaining pirate vessels saw their leadership crippled and broke formation. Some tried to flee. Others continued attacking out of desperation or stupidity. The Indomitable disabled each one with the same clinical precision. 4 minutes after the battle began, 40 pirate ships floated powerless in space. Not a single one had been destroyed. Not a single crew member had been killed by human weapons fire. Zarek stood on the bridge trying to process what he had just witnessed. The Indomitable had faced a numerically superior force and neutralized them without breaking a sweat and without killing anyone. The restraint was as impressive as the power. Chen was already moving to the next priority. Medical teams prepare to receive casualties. I want triage stations set up for Concorde and pirate wounded alike. Engineering, send damage control teams to help repair the Concorde vessels. Communications, open a channel to the pirate flagship. Cross's face appeared on screen, blooded and furious. You should have destroyed us. Why didn't you finish it? Chen's expression was tired but firm. Because we've seen enough death, pirate. Your crews are someone's sons and daughters, someone's family. You made terrible choices today, but that doesn't mean you deserve to die. Concorde authorities will deal with you. Our role is to keep everyone alive, even our enemies. She cut the transmission and turned to Zer. Ambassador, Captain, your ships need repairs and your wounded need medical attention. We have the facilities to help. Will you accept our assistance? Zarek felt something shift inside him, a fundamental understanding clicking into place. These humans, with their massive ship and devastating weapons, had just demonstrated something the Concorde had built its entire civilization on. The choice to preserve life even when destroying it would be easier. Yes, Captain Chen. We accept your help. And I think I understand now why your people survived the death of your world. You refused to let death win, even when it would be simpler to embrace it. Over the next hours, the Indomitable became a rescue and recovery center. Human medical teams worked alongside Concorde personnel to treat wounded from both sides of the brief battle. Engineers crawled through damaged Concorde ships, making repairs with materials and expertise that saved vessels that would otherwise have been lost. Dr. Park found Zurich in one of the medical bays, watching as a human doctor carefully treated a wounded crush pilot. The pilot had been injured during the pirate boarding attempt, and the doctor's hands moved with practiced skill, completely unconcerned that she was saving a species she had never seen before. Your people do not hesitate to help, even those who are alien to them, Zurich observed. Dr. Park smiled. When Earth was dying, we learned something important. Life is precious, all life, not just human life. We had to choose who would come on the Titan-class ships, but we brought as many Earth animals and plants as we could. We brought genetic samples of species we couldn't save physically. We did this because we understood that we were responsible not just for human survival, but for the survival of Earth's entire biosphere. He gestured to the medical bay. Helping your people, helping even the pirates who attacked us. It's the same principle. We're all living beings trying to survive in a vast, often hostile universe. If we don't help each other, what's the point? Zurich watched as the doctor finished treating the crash pilot and moved on to a pirate with a broken limb, showing the same care and attention to both. He thought about the 4 minutes of combat, the precision strikes, the restraint shown even in the face of aggression. Your species has seen death on a scale we cannot imagine, Zurich said quietly. 4 billion lost when Earth died. Yet you choose to preserve life at every opportunity. This is remarkable. It's not remarkable, Dr. Park replied. It's necessary. We lost 4 billion people. Yes, we carry that grief with us every day. But we also carry the responsibility to honor their memory by making sure those who lived and those we meet along the way have the best chance. 3 months had passed since the battle with the pirates. The Concord Council chambers had never seen such activity, with representatives from over 200 species gathered in the vast circular space. Outside the chamber, billions of beings across dozens of worlds watched the proceedings through quantum-linked broadcasts. Today's decision would reshape the galaxy's future. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the center of the chamber. No longer just the commander of a refugee ship, but humanity's voice to the stars. She wore her formal uniform crisp and professional, but her eyes showed the weariness of someone who had carried the weight of 50 million lives for too long without rest. High Counselor Miron called the session to order. The Concord has reviewed the petition from the human species requesting settlement rights and alliance status. We have heard testimony from Ambassador Captain Zirk, reviewed data on the encounter with hostile forces and examined the technical specifications of the Titan-class vessels. Now we must decide. Commander Exthar rose to speak. The Crash leader mandibles clicked with agitation. I speak against this proposal. The humans are too powerful, too dangerous. Yes, they showed restraint in one battle. But what happens when they have established themselves? What happens when they no longer need our goodwill? We would be inviting a predator species into our home. Murmurs of agreement rippled through some delegations. Fear was a powerful force, and many species still saw the indomitable as a threat despite everything that had happened. But Dr. Shinvara stood, her crystalline body glowing with conviction. Counselor Zixthar speaks of what might happen. I speak of what has happened. The humans disabled 40 pirate vessels without a single fatality. They provided medical care to their attackers. They helped repair damaged Concord ships using their own resources. They have shown us not what they might become, but what they already are, a species that chooses life over death at every opportunity. A Delpha representative added her voice. Furthermore, the humans offer us something invaluable. Their construction techniques, their survival technologies, their experience in building vessels that can sustain entire populations. If any Concord species faced an existential threat, we could learn from humanity how to survive it. The debate continued for hours. Some argued that humanity's very existence as refugees proved they were vulnerable to the same disasters that could strike any species. Others contended that humanity's military capabilities, however restrained, were too dangerous to allow into Concord territory. Finally, Zer requested permission to speak. Honored counselors, I have walked among the humans. I have seen their memorial hall where they remember 4 billion dead. I have watched them tend gardens in artificial sunlight because they refuse to let their connection to nature die. I have seen them risk their lives to save strangers. He paused, his voice carrying the weight of conviction. We can choose to see them as threats, or we can choose to see them as what they truly are, survivors who have learned the most important lesson in the galaxy. We are all better off together than apart. I have submitted a formal recommendation for immediate alliance talks and settlement rights. I asked the Council to approve this recommendation. High Counselor Miron looked at Captain Chen. Before we vote, Captain Chen, do you wish to address the Council? Chen stepped forward and the chamber fell silent. Honored members of the Concordant, I will not pretend to fully understand your fears. My species has spent the last decades alone in the dark, desperate and afraid. But I can tell you what we have learned from that experience. We learned that isolation is death. We learned that cooperation is survival. We learned that showing kindness even to those who harm us is not weakness, but strength. She gestured to the display screen showing images of the indomitable. You see a warship. We see a home. You see weapons. We see tools that keep our family safe. You see a threat. We see a chance to finally stop running and start building. We don't ask you to trust us blindly. We ask you to give us the opportunity to prove ourselves worthy of that trust. Chen reached into her uniform and pulled out a small data chip. This contains complete technical specifications for Titan-class construction. Our fusion reactor designs, our agricultural systems, and our point defense technologies. We offer this freely with no conditions, whether you approve our petition or not. Because if sharing what we've learned can help even one Concord species survive a crisis, then maybe the 4 billion we lost on Earth didn't die for nothing. The chamber erupted in surprise conversation. The offer was unprecedented. Technology worth more than some species' entire economies given freely with no strings attached. High Councillor Merson called for order, then called for the vote. All those in favor of granting humanity settlement rights on uninhabited worlds in the refuge systems and offering alliance status. The voting took several minutes as each delegation recorded their decision. The tension in the chamber was unbearable. Chen stood still, her face neutral, but Zer could see the hope and fear wearing in her eyes. Finally, High Councillor Miron announced the results. The motion passes 147 in favor, 53 against. Humanity is granted settlement rights on 3 Class M worlds in the refuge systems: New Terra, Haven's Rest, and Sanctuary's Promise. Furthermore, humanity is offered provisional alliance status with the Galactic Concord to be reviewed in 10 standard years. Chen's legs nearly gave out with relief. 50 million people finally had a home after all the loss, all the fear, all the desperate hope they had a future. The formal ceremonies took another hour with documents signed and treaties witnessed. When it was finally done, Chen found Zurich waiting for her outside the council chambers. "Congratulations, Captain," he said warmly. "Your people have earned this." "Thank you, Ambassador." "Captain, we couldn't have done it without you taking that first risk, coming aboard the Indomitable when you had every reason to be afraid." Zurich made a gesture that translated as a smile. "I have been appointed the first Concord ambassador to humanity. It seems I will be spending considerable time among your people. I look forward to learning more about humans and helping to build bridges between our species." Over the following weeks, preparations began for humanity's first planetary settlement. The Indomitable would be the first of the 12 Titan-class ships to reach the refuge systems. The other 11 were scattered across the galaxy, each one making its own first contact, each one carrying its own piece of humanity's survival. The world the humans named New Terra was beautiful in a way that made even hardened spaces weep. It had oceans and continents, forests and mountains, weather patterns and seasons. It was smaller than Earth had been with slightly higher gravity, but it was alive and welcoming. Chen stood in the Indomitable's Memorial Hall 1 last time before the landing. The holographic faces of 4 billion dead humans surrounded her, their stories preserved forever in light and data. "We made it," she whispered to them. "We found a home. Your sacrifice meant something. I promise we'll build something good here. Something worthy of your memory." The hibernation bays began their waking cycles. 30 million people who had slept through the journey started to emerge. Confused and hopeful, parents woke their children and told them they would walk on solid ground for the first time in their lives. Elders who had given up their waking time to ensure younger generations had resources wept with joy that they had survived to see this moment. Dr. Park found Chen on the observation deck, both of them watching New Terra grow larger in the viewport. 15 years, he said quietly. 15 years since we left Earth. Sometimes it felt like we'd never stop running. We're not just running anymore, Chen replied. Now we get to build. Now we get to show the galaxy what humanity can create when we're not just surviving but thriving. The descent to New Terra took 3 days, with the Indomitable settling into a geosynchronous orbit above the primary landing site. Smaller transport ships began fing people and supplies to the surface. The first humans to set foot on New Terra were children chosen deliberately because the future belonged to them. Zurich stood with Chen in the landing zone watching as the first residential modules were deployed. Humans worked alongside Concord engineers, sharing techniques and learning from each other. The first gardens were planted with seeds from Earth, ancient genetic heritage taking root in new soil. The first buildings rose, designed with both human needs and Concord architectural standards in mind. This is just the beginning, Chen said, watching children run through grass for the first time, their laughter carrying on the wind. Yes, Zurich agreed. The beginning of something remarkable. Your people will change the Concord, Captain. Already I see my own people looking at humans and asking themselves how we might build better, survive longer, cooperate more effectively.